stolen land that many of us are standing on every day, right? As we breathe in and breathe out, let us also honor the stolen bodies, right? Bodies, the indigenous communities from the continent of Africa who have contributed to so much of our growth and well-being. So as we breathe in and breathe out, let us honor the stolen land, stewards of the stolen land, and the stewards of the stolen bodies here with us today. Right, as you breathe in and breathe out, don't I gently invite you to remember to take care of yourself, right? This could sit and feel different, the conference, the content, the topics. And if we made any kind of mistakes, right, in terms of our language, in terms of our references, right, we want, as a collective organizing committee, want to ask you for your forgiveness, right? So as you breathe in and breathe out, I want to invite you to be in that space, and whenever you need, right, as was announced, as a yoga guru here, and many others here to help you and I, right, to work through some of the things that we are feeling in our bodies. So as you breathe in and breathe out, I want to gently invite you to open your eyes, right? Open your eyes and look around, see all of the faces that are here today with us in this space. Thank you all, and sit down. Appreciate you all.
Dr. Raj, thank you so much. It has occurred to me that for some reason, we're missing the sheet in the packet that tells you where to find the quiet room, the yoga room, and well, if you're going with a counselor, they will take you to that room. But if you go back towards where you came in, here in Founders Hall, and you go past the second set of doors and turn right, you'll see the elevator. You go down and turn right again, and you'll find rooms L117 and 118. Okay, so that's right through there, right downstairs, right, L117 and L118. Happy to repeat those as needed. All right. It's my pleasure now to invite my colleague, Dr. Darshini Ganatilaka, up to the podium, and she is going to introduce our speaker, Ms. Burma Bushi.
I have the greatest honor of introducing our keynote speaker for today, Burma Bushi. Burma was born and raised in Hollow Water First Nation. Burma has always been a leader and an advocate for all Indigenous people. Her tireless effort and passion to create an honest and just system for her people was the driving force for the changes in the justice system, particularly for Indigenous people and incarceration. Burma was instrumental in the creation of the community Holistic Circle Healing, a process that addresses sexual abuse and family violence in her community. During the process, she was met with controversy, animosity, and anger, but with unprecedented passion for the betterment of the people. She rose above and beyond to address painful issues of sexual abuse and family violence. Burma received her Bachelor's of Social Work degree from the University of Manitoba and worked within Child and Family Services for several years before retirement. It was during her employment with Child and Family Services that she saw how Indigenous parents and community could take control of their own healing, returning children home, having children remain at home in the community, and support family and community reconciliation. Burma is a knowledge keeper and also an advocate for restoring traditions and language in hollow water. Folks, without further ado, Burma Bushi.
Hello? Hello? Are you able to hear us?
Hear you. Yep, we can hear you.
Okay, Barb, the mic is right there. You're good.
Just to let you know, we're still having a little bit of tech difficulty in the auditorium. People can see and hear you on Zoom, and people can hear you in the auditorium. So please go ahead. Thank you so much.
Bonjour. My spirit name is Asinajikwe. My clan is Shiship. My English name is Burma Bushi. I still live in my community, and I'm happy to be part of your sessions. I hope that what I have to share will be of some value to people listening. So I'll start with how we came to address sexual abuse in my community. It was not an area that we wanted to work in, but as it turns out, we were led to this place. And in the 80s, in 1981, Child and Family Services, the provincial law came into my community to deal with just normal, regular issues involving children and families. And after a time, there were a couple of areas that involved sexual abuse, and we were not happy with the way these kind of cases were handled. But the provincial law had full authority to practice their process. And it wasn't until we started to talk and collaborate between ourselves as First Nation people that held positions in the community dealing with family issues. And so we began to gather and talk and study the Child Welfare Act. And basically what happens under that process, they will come in, child and family will come in. There's workers in the community, but there's what they call experts out there, and they would come in, take over the case, and they would follow their procedures, policies, standards, and we had no say in developing those procedures. And so most often what would happen is a child would be taken out of the community and oftentimes would be placed outside the community. And so that was not our idea of protecting children. And then the offender would be put over to the adult justice system. And so the police would come in, arrest, and take the person out. And after that happening, the child being removed from the community, the offender being removed from the community, what we were left with as a community was a lot of heartache and really no way to bring healing to the affected families. And so that is what that's what we were faced with, and that is why we had to find a better way, one that had where we were in charge of the case and where we dealt with both victim and offender. And in order to do that, we had to prepare our community big time, because right up until the 80s, we had no sexual abuse. Everything was kept under wraps. And at one point, we had a session involving 60 people from the community, and we had a short survey. And the survey had two questions. One, had you ever been abused? Number two, had you ever abused others? And we were shocked by the results of that short survey. And what we found was every third person had been abused, and every, I think 2 out of the 3 had moved on to abuse others. And so from that point, we realized that this was a problem that was not only was, that touched almost every family in the community. And so what we designed was those of us that, and there was a team of 24. I was only one of the 24. So out of a team of 24, we developed a process of, we set up focus groups, and we divided our community into small groups, and the 24 people would go and sit with these small groups, and they would share their stories. And our community at that time was in total denial. But by sharing our stories, they could not say that's not true. And after a time, they were able to start opening that area in their life. And and then we looked at our own governance in the community and surrounding communities. And so we had meetings with those leaders and made them aware how widespread the problem was and what needed to be done. And they supported our team by in writing. They put up a position. They wrote up their positions on abuse, and that they fully supported the team that was put in place. And so it really cut down on the chaos that happens when there's a disclosure. And so the next area that we developed was looking at the circle process. Rather than individual and professionals doing the interviews, people that didn't know our community, we decided that we would be the ones that would sit with our offenders and victims. And so in the meantime, the groups, the focus groups were happening throughout the communities. And the last ones to be the last group that we worked with were young people at the school and so there was our work. We, through those focus groups, we uncovered 19 disclosures of current situations, and we had to deal with those. We had to deal with those immediately. We couldn't put them aside or wait for experts. This year was the work that needed to be done. And so we developed circles. There were just too many cases and too few people to deal with the problem. So in circles, we found that it was less threatening for offenders. And so when we got a disclosure, we made sure we worked with Child and Family Services, made sure that the child was safe. And the first place we looked for safety was their own family. And once the families were able to listen to their child and to be able to support, because a lot of these cases were were within families. There was so we had to assess whether mom and dad were able to keep their child safe from the family offenders. And so once that was done, we supported the family through the healing process, and we advocated that the child should stay with the family and not be removed. And fortunately, we were successful in that. There was Child and Family listened to us and worked with us. So then we were able to concentrate on the offender because there was absolutely nothing in place for offenders other than calling the police and having them arrested and taken away. So what we did with the after ensuring safety for the child and family, the team that was set up to work with the victim worked with Child and Family and family in the community. So then there was a team, part of the team was able to work on the offender. And the first circle with the offender was to bring the disclosure to the offender and directly ask whether the whether he did what the child disclosed. And the next step was to educate the offender. We knew what would happen. If he said, no, I didn't do that, then we would have to turn the case over to the justice. And so we educated him on that. And then we also educated that person with our process that we would support him, set services in place, and work with him all the way through court. And so 9 times out of 10, the offender agreed to work with us. And I think there was only one situation that refused. And even though the victims were willing to work with us, the offender did not. So that case went directly to the justice system, and he took a jail sentence. Now, with the people that wanted to work with us, we immediately we set everything out for that person. We looked at the 4 parts of that person, the spirituality being the first, and then the mental, emotional, physical. And we as First Nations have suffered years and years of trauma. And so that, with that knowledge, we knew that we had to deal with that first of all. And the way that most offenders were dealing with those situations was to use alcohol and drugs, prescription drugs. And so that was the first step. They had to clean up. And we proposed treatment, or else we designed a home-based treatment model. But they had to clean up that part of their life. And then the next part was to work on the traumas, our own history as First Nations people, and how trauma works, how over time it's turned inward to people that we love, and once they're able to see that, and then they can start moving emotionally and mentally. And so it's a long healing process, but all the way through, we have convinced the justice system to write up a protocol about how these cases should be dealt with just within our area. We have 3 Métis communities surrounding our First Nation, and it only applied to those areas, nowhere else. And at the time, these cases could be dealt with at the community level with the help, with the agreement of communities, and but we had to demonstrate that our process had merit, was credible, and so we had to work with outside systems, the justice, the local RCMP station, the Child and Family Services. So we had to be totally open with those programs. And everybody that was involved from the outside were given step-by-step process that we would use over a 5-year period. And every offender that took responsibility for what they had done, we guaranteed that we would be connected to them for 5 years and help them through the process. And in total, in our small community, we brought 86 cases to the justice system. Not all of them made it to court, but there was quite a few. I would say probably around 20 situations made it to court. And of course, we were connected to the local resources, the public health nurse, the school, the principal was part of our team, the local churches, they were part of our team. All these people from with those programs were also part of our team. And so we had eyes all over the community, and we had regular sessions together as a team. And so we had to continue working on the community in terms of pushing for healing training sessions, other programs, group work. We brought in therapists, one to work with victims and their family, and one to work with offenders and their family. We really pushed for family involvement, but it didn't really work for therapists because for whatever reason. So that part of the work we had to do. We had weekly sessions with the victim and offender, and they had to see the therapists that we brought in. But we also developed our own healing strategies. We brought in the pipe and the medicines and our lodges, and it really calmed the victims when they first disclosed, and their little spirit was all over the place. So going into a sweat lodge, you can just see the calm coming over the young person. And so we began to witness the healing that happens with our lodges, with our ceremonies, with our language. And so we, whenever we sat with offenders that, especially that first year, that anger was still so present. And by using our language, you could see how it affected the person and really calmed them down so that they could be reasoned with, they could be reasonable. And the second circle that we developed was a circle with family. For the child, it was much easier, but for the offender, it was their job to inform their family what they had done, what they were going to be charged with. And it wasn't that wasn't our job. That was up to that person. And so using the family circle, we slowly over time, the offender was able to give a full confession to their family. And so after we also looked at the time frame we had with the justice system, we began to understand the remand process. And so as long as we were taking the offender to court on a monthly basis and giving a full report to the local RCMP and the Crown Attorney, then we could bring that person back. And that was a process we used monthly. On a monthly basis, we would take them back to court. And it was a little difficult to try to convince the courts that the offender wanted one of us to speak on their behalf or to stand with them while they spoke to the judge themselves. We had to use defense lawyers. And so it took a while to convince the lawyers that it was up to the person to speak for themselves and that they could not speak for them. Didn't quite work out the way that we had hoped it would, but over time, we came to develop relationships with some defense lawyers, and we developed relationships with the Crown Attorney, with judges, and the police. And so they, over time, they supported our work. And there were even a few situations where the sergeant would come and sit with us when with the initial circle with the offender. And that's how deep the relationship developed with the local authorities. And for sure, the Crown Attorney also participated in when we were with the circle with offenders. And so I would say over a 2-year period, there was a very solid connection, solid relationship with offenders. I mean, with the justice system, and same with Child and Family Services. So then the initial cases were processed in Pine Falls. And what we discovered was, although these were public, they became public knowledge once a sentence was passed, we had a hard time to bring that information back to the community for updating on cases. And so the next circle that we developed was a community process sentencing circle. And it actually came to light when we dealt with the an incest situation. And we were not sure if our process was acceptable to the outside with those kind of cases. And we did a lot of PR with justice people. And we even went to the jails, the federal jail in Winnipeg, Stony Mountain, working with inmates in there, and also the experts in the area, like guards, the elders in the system, the parole people, and
They want.
what's that? Share what happened with the first sentencing circle,
Okay.
and then I'll close it off. Okay?
Yep.
So I just wanted to share what happened in the first sentencing circle in my community. It was an incest situation. And so the circle involved the outside justice system, the clerks, the Crown, the police, the judge. And within our community, there were the victims and their group, the therapists, the family, and same with offenders, their group that they were working with, and family. And so what happened, of course, we did all the ceremonies before, the day before, getting ready. So the day of court, there were 4 circles that happened. So the first time the feather traveled around, it was for people to state. And it was a public process. There were about 250 people in the building. And so the first time the feather went around was for people to state why they were there. Second round was for victims. We all spoke to the victim about their courage to bring out this situation. And the third round was for people to speak directly to the offender. And then the fourth circle was where the judge, it was Judge Murray Sinclair that presided, and it was time for him to pronounce sentence. And so he put those 2 people on probation to the community. I can't remember if it was 2 years or 3 years. So community had three more years to work with that person. And but what happened in that circle was 2 people whose cases had been dealt with outside the community. They stood up and they shared their sentence with the community for the first time. 2 other workers from our team stood up and they shared how their attitudes had changed through working with the whole process with their community. And the third was a young man, a brother to the male offender, stood up, and he was 14 at the time, and he shared that his situation was in court. He was 7 young cousins disclosed about him, and then the fourth one was an aunt of the male offender stood up and asked, when we used to drink together, party together, did you ever assault me? And the offender said, yes, I did. And I thought for sure everything was going to blow up in our faces. And I have never seen anything like that in regular court, but that's what's possible with a sentencing circle in the community that's working together to deal with these kinds of situations. So I'll end it there. And if you have any questions, I don't know if there's time for questions.
Ms. Bushy, thank you so much. I'm going to hold the mic up so you can hear the applause in the auditorium, I hope. We do have time. Of course, we've been running a bit late this morning, but we do have time. We want to take time for a few questions.
Yes.
Brian Higby, do we have any questions in the chat? Do we want to start with, in the webinar Q&A? Do we want to start with a question there?
Are they asking me? Or asking the audience?
All right, great. Can I have my two of my volunteers up here, please? All right, Ms. Bushy, we're going to take a couple of questions from the auditorium. So if you have a question you'd like to ask Ms. Bushy, would you go ahead and raise your hand now? We'll try to get a mic to you.
Hi, thank you for this information. One question I had is, have you seen progress within your community of understanding this process that you're talking about? I've seen note that, you know, everybody doesn't support it within Hollow Water, but have you seen progress over the years that there is more understanding and acceptance of this process?
I would say the first 30 years, definitely there was progress. There were more and more disclosures came about, and not all of them got processed through court, but definitely all of them were reported to proper authorities. And it definitely, there was a direct correlation between disclosures and suicide attempts. At one time, in one setting, we had 17 attempts over a 1 week period. And what we discovered with working with abuse in our community, that number came down significantly in the 30 years that we had direct healing process. I would say in the last, now that we've retired, a lot of the team has retired, I keep reminding young people today, it's your turn. Here's what we had in place. Now it's your turn to pick up. And if there's any way, if you need our help in any way, we are here. So I feel like the openness is not there anymore. It's gone back. I think we've done a backslide probably not as bad as it was before, but certainly there's been a backslide, and we just have to pick up again. You know, with COVID, it really shut down our community, very little communication happening, and most people were just stayed within their own circles. So very little happening with the healing that needs to keep on for our community. So it's been a struggle, I would say, the last 10, 15 years. So what I'm saying is it did work, but now we're in a different place and we have to regroup and get going again. Does that answer you?
Sister, thank you for that that presentation. I heard that all through my body, and I just appreciate the work that you all were doing. You made a point in your presentation about the use of drugs and alcohol and the role that they played in the abuse. And I made the point of saying specifically that drugs and alcohol use was a non-negotiable. Those were your words. I wonder if you can reflect a bit on the number of cases that you all saw and heard. I think you said 86. In those 86 cases, how prevalent for you was the role of drugs and alcohol? Thank you.
Oh, they were very high. And I think part of the backslide today is totally has a lot to do with the current situation with drugs, not so much alcohol anymore. Well, there is some, but more prevalent is the drugs, hard drugs coming into my community, and we are allowing that to happen. We have to regroup and look at what we need to do for our children. But definitely drugs are the first visible sign that, you know, things are not going the way they should be. Prescription drugs. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. We're going to take a question, one more question here in the auditorium, and then we're going to take a couple from the chat, and then probably need to wrap up after about 3. Yes, please go ahead.
Hi, thank you very much for sharing. If I recall from watching Hollow Water, you yourself had experienced abuse as a child.
Yes.
How has this process been healing for you?
I didn't get the last part.
Sorry. How has this process of working with other victims and offenders been healing for you?
I think definitely the empathy part. Initially, when our elders advised that we needed to work with offenders too, it was very difficult because of my own experience and having lived with the incidents in my young life for 40, close to 50 years. It was very difficult in the beginning for me to find that empathy, but it was in fact our laws as Anishinaabe people and our ceremonies and our lodges that helped me overcome that. It's hard to be kind if you hang on to thoughts of punishment thoughts of, I don't want to work with that person. So it really cuts to the soul when you're working with kindness and honesty. Yeah, that first part of those laws apply to you as a person. How am I being kind? How am I being honest with all these thoughts? How can I be open and honest with the people I work with if all these thoughts are full in my soul and my heart? So yeah, I was the first one. It's always the first year, always the first one to for getting that help, getting that healing. Otherwise, we're not going to move. So yeah.
Sorry. I think we have a question from the.
Thank you. Yes, we
here.
have over 60 people participating via Zoom. And we have a question from David who asks, can we know the total number of those hurt and who caused harm and how many were addressed successfully without prison and at what cost? And finally, what are the lasting impacts and challenges still unaddressed? Purple heart emoji, praying hands emoji.
As far as money, we have demonstrated over and over and over to funders that our process works and it is the cheapest way to go. All the funding that we ever received, all that time was $240,000 from the federal government and $240,000 from the provincial government. And multiple studies, at least 4 or 5 studies of taking us apart to look at. It was incredible that we operated with that level of funding and coming up with those, the successes that we were able to show. Like out of 20 cases, 2 recidivism, only 2. And of course, we could not deal with them the second time, they had to go to jail. And because that's what the outside system has to offer, and everyone knows the how much government is putting into the jail system. It's going to bankrupt our country. That's how bad it is. So yeah, we've demonstrated that this is the way to go. We can hold people accountable for as long as we are living together and as long as we have proper resources in place to continue that healing process. So I can't say any more than that. I don't know how else to convince people that our process works. So government is not listening.
Thank you. One more comment from online is from Cheryl, who says, restorative circle in the community is a better solution than what today's system is using.
I agree totally.
Ms. Bushy, thank you so much. It means everything that you joined us today. And thank you for being part of this event. And we deeply, deeply honor you for the work that you've been doing these decades and honor your community and all that have partnered with you in it. Thank you again for being part of our event today.
Thank you.
Oh, they're all clapping, but they muted it.
Thank you. Take good care. Yeah, hang on. Hang on. All right, great. We had a break scheduled for later, but everything's kind of running late. So I think it's best to go ahead and take a break now. It would be awesome if we could keep it to about 10 minutes. It's 10:22. Let's try to be back in the seats 10:32-ish.
No, y'all have 5 minutes.
You need to stop. Thank you.
My panelists here.
Check, 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 check. Test 1, 2. Check, check. Test 1, 2. Check. Check, 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 check. Test 1, 2, 1, 2. Check, check, check. Check. 1, 2, 1, 2. Check, check. Can I see that one again? Can I see that one again, just real quick, just for. Check. Check, 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 test 1, 2. Check. Check, test 1, 2. Check, check, check. Test, hey, check, hey. And 1. Check, check. Check. Test. Check, check, check. Check, check. Test 1, 2. Hey. Check, check.
Okay.
I found that even if it does work. Check, 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 check.
Hey, thank you for your patience. You want a mic up?
Check, 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 check. Test 1, 2. Check. Check. Check.
Everybody, thank you. Appreciate. I have the distinct honor of sitting in this panel with this amazing spirit. So give it up for our amazing spirits here. In a minute, they will introduce themselves. Let me just want to invite us to just center ourselves and, whatever it takes for you to breathe in, breathe out, and be in this space. And right, we just took a break. We heard some amazing wisdom, right, from practitioners. Again, rekindling and connecting to the indigenous ways of, right, healing, right? So as we come into this space, I want to invite our panelists here, right, to share their name and one or two things about what they heard from our speaker, right? One or two wisdoms they heard from our speaker. And you will all get a chance to ask questions. We have some mic runners here when the panel is done with some of their sharing. So appreciate, and we'll start with Sophie. Yeah.
Okay, I'm Sophie Shank, collecting my thoughts as I have that question to me, but I think the two things that I'm thinking about the most, one came up in the questions with this question about disclosure and suicides. And I think it's not just the question of disclosure, but the question of disclosure in a community that hears it. Because a lot of times there's disclosure and there isn't a space
and there isn't a mechanism. So I think that question throughout the conversation, the other piece that resonates with that was the moment in court where somebody was able to ask, and you had somebody who had caused harm in the position of being in the most vulnerable state and still being like, yes, I did these things to you. You didn't know for sure, and I'm confirming that to you. That takes an entire process to get an individual to be in court and able to give that person that disclosure and that, you know, capacity and lane to heal that wasn't available otherwise. So I think one of the things that was just most striking throughout the talk was this question about what these processes create for the survivor and for those who have caused harm.
My name is Siobhan L. Johnson. And just like Sophie said, this is the first time me even having this kind of conversation in a forum or in a space like this. So just getting grounded and kind of like just kind of grounding myself and kind of figuring out, that's just been a process actually for the last couple of days as this morning has approached. But one of the things that I had gathered from listening to the elders speak was the concept of empathy, because empathy played a big part for me. And then like really understanding that when we start to talk about restoration and healing, that it starts like all that is applicable to us and that we are a part of that equation. And you can't desire that for the space without yourself being included in that. So that's what really resonated with me, the few things that I heard.
Hi, my name is Keila Marie Granda, and it's on. Yeah, can you? Yeah. Can, okay, so my name is Keila Marie Granda, and for me, I think what I took away really was a sense of, a sense of hope, but also a sense of weariness. I think from from what we learned this morning, there was a lot of hope to be taken away in terms of what has been done and the reconciliation and redemptive qualities that are involved in restorative justice. But I think there was also a call to action and empathy, or a call to action and a call to empathy and a continued call to doing this work, and a weariness that I heard, and that just really makes me want to, again, talk more about this and why it's so important and how we can do some of those practices even in our own communities here.
Thank you. Thank you. We'll start with Siobhan. Just want to invite us, right, Siobhan, to share as much as your story of somebody who has been harmed. And how do you, right, see it, feel it, right, and contemplate and reflect on it.
So I can start with this, is that I just celebrated 42 years of being born on January 22nd. And I was actually in Accra, Ghana doing that, which was a dream come true for me. I have to context it like this. I've been an educator for 17 years, working with students K through 12. I've been a university professor for 12 years, 10 here at Metro State in the urban teacher program. I will say a great deal of my life has been dedicated not just to working with young people in the sense of making sure they can see themselves by seeing me as a vision of possibility in the classroom and outside of the classroom, or just in the schoolhouse, in the community, but also kind of like being a watching eye, like being a guardian, so to speak, to children, because my abuse, one instance of my abuse happened when I was between the ages of 4 and 6. And I was sodomized by an elder cousin who was 16 or 17 at the time. And I say that, I tie that in is because we really have to be careful in regards to our children. A lot of times our children are subjected to things that their minds don't even understand. And oftentimes by people that they trust. So there's like a barrier that's already down that makes them more susceptible to that kind of violation. And so I will just say that the part that I really want to focus on what I want to share is the level of work that it takes on a day-to-day basis to alter a traumatic experience like that in your life. Because if it's not faced or communicated, it will show up. What we all know in psychology is that our minds compartmentalize and our minds will shut down and save itself to some degree to let our bodies kind of experience this craziness that it's going through. But our bodies don't forget. And that trauma will come back up. And that was my case, that it continued to show up in different spaces in my life until someone had to stop me and be like, something happened to you, what happened? So I will say my focus, and as I continue to share and the sisters share as well, is that talking. I was with a couple of my dear soul brothers the other day, and across ethnicity, across culture, children are being abused more than we know and more than I know we talk about. And the normalization of us knowing that and not talking about it is what's unacceptable. And so to create those spaces for children to where they don't even have to be exposed, there are certain parameters and things that we can establish so that children don't even have to be put into those vulnerable positions, in addition to us talking about what we know is happening. Because I just now, I'll pass this, but I was with a group, I serve as a deacon in a church in the Twin Cities, Liberty Community Church, formerly Kwanzaa. And our leadership called for our leadership, the elders and the deacons, to come together. She said, there's just some brokenness in our souls and our spirits. Something is going on. And so a lot of times when you're active in the community and you're like, maybe have a public face, it's hard to get therapy in the Twin Cities because you know too many people. And too many people may be impressed with your resume and just don't realize you need some help. And that's the situation I was running into. Like, lady, I don't care if you read my book. I don't care if you saw this. I am in trouble. And I ran out of people to go to, and that's the truth, because a lot of times people think you don't get help, but you do. And so my pastor had called for a psychotherapist to come from Atlanta to work with our leadership at our church. And it was about 12 of us women who took on a beautiful Saturday to work on psychotherapy for 6 hours. Like, that's not the lunch invitation I usually pick up on a Saturday. But when you are really ready to heal, like, and when you were just tired of these things coming back to you and robbing you of your present, you're gonna do what it takes. And so we took that 6 hours that day. Out of the 12 of us women, ranging from the ages of 24 to 68, 8 of us had been sexually violated before the age of 10. 2 of the women who spoke had never said it to anybody else until that day. And so that leads me to believe and leads me to know that it's happening more than we're talking about. And the fact is, we know that it's happening. And so I think to normalize the conversation of that healing, because when you have been so violated like that, it's gonna show up. So, yeah.
It's yours.
Oh, right. You guys,
Like, I'm done.
Siobhan, thank you. I think Rasmus Mannequin said, right, you are not a bad person. Something was done to you, right? And both Rasma and Inka Mendofe, who's a sister, healing sister, often say, right, you got to work on your body. Got to be conscious of your body. I appreciate that reminder. Appreciate that reminder. And just a reminder for all of us, right? If it is sitting in your body, and if you need to move around, please, right? Please take care of yourself. Right? Kilomari?
Okay, can you just quickly repeat what exactly you would like me to say or to respond to?
Your story, right, of the harm.
So I'll keep it pretty short as I can. I was exploited and trafficked throughout my youth, and it led to a pattern of behavior in which I would seek out encounters that I would be victimized in, because it was part of my normal life. It was what I grew up with. And you know, as an adult, it took a while for me to really get to a place where I was emotionally and, you know, spiritually and physically healthy. I went for a double bachelor's in counseling and pastoral ministries. I went for my master's in criminal justice, specializing in prevention, rehabilitation, and restorative justice. And I went on to working for the University of Minnesota as a violence prevention coordinator. And it's there that I was raped in 2013, the end of 2013, by a colleague. My story has gone very public. I don't say this with pride, but if you Google me, you'll see all over the place. It led to a long process with the state of Minnesota to change those very laws that my rapist was allowed to walk away from and walk away on. And I did not, when I went for my rape kit after the rapes that night, I wanted an anonymous kit done. I did not want to take any kind of action at that point. However, and I was part of the START team, so I knew that was an option. I just put in those codes at that hospital, so I knew that was an option. But the nurse that was there recognized me and called the police, who I worked with on a regular basis on cases such as these. And long story short, I ended up reporting. Eventually, I was even going to be held as a hostile witness because I refused to continue reporting. It was a mess, and the most victimization that was done to me was done by the justice system. And so I spent years trying to give a voice to how just so many of us who have been victimized on both sides and all sides of the system, because most people don't realize that victims are offenders. And I sometimes don't like to use that word, and offenders are victims, okay? And that crossover and intersectionality is so important. So basically I started lobbying, I created a nonprofit. By 2019, I was at the legislature working to create the Criminal Sexual Conduct Reform Working Group. I was part of the original steering committee overseeing 76 individuals. Professor Janis is here, and hopefully he recognizes that name from the group because we relied heavily on his expertise. But it was a 2.5-year process. At the end, it was just me alone testifying and championing it through the Senate and the House last year. And my story made it to the Star Tribune, the Denied Justice series, Care 11, CBS, and eventually USA Today. And so those laws were changed. The laws that allowed that man to walk away, they were changed. They were changed last year. And 5 new criminal sexual conduct laws went in. Great, right? Especially when it comes to our kids and really helping our youth. Guess what? I'm not any better than I was 7 years ago. I still have a hole in my heart. It didn't do anything. Changing the laws didn't change the situation. Yes, it will hopefully help others to not be victimized by the system. However, it was not a form of justice. There was nothing restorative about it. I feel like I sold my soul to get to this point to be able to make these changes. And that man is still a high school principal and has never once accepted the harm that he did to me or the other women that had come before me and potentially have come since. And all I wanted for the past 7, 8 years, 9 years now, was a chance to sit down and have those conversations. And that's what was missing. That's what I wanted for so long. And that's what I think so many other survivors want. We don't necessarily want a person to go to prison. We don't necessarily want the law coming down on them and sending them away. We don't want disproportionate, sentencing. We don't want those things. What we want is a world in which this doesn't have to happen at all in the first place. And so that's why I'm here, because I have been blessed and honored to be on various sides of the coin as a victim, as an offender. I have been all over the place, and you know what, I'm okay with that because it's allowed me to affect change. I just wish we could affect more and do it in a more restorative manner. So thank you.
Sophie, you good?
Yeah. I'm just sort of blown away by both of you. So, yeah, my story. I guess depending on where you jump in on my story, I was a student at the U, went on to a PhD program, was being actually perped on by my advisor, and met somebody on the bus. And that's who I ended up having a baby with. Right now, tying back to this question of like sex offenders, why does it matter? You know, I'm actually in the position of, in one case, being hyper visible to the state. I'm about to testify at a rape trial for the father of my child, who happens to be a Black rapper who is very easily, positioned to now be one of the 0.7% of all cases that get felony rape charges. So on that side of the story, coming to when I'm going to be testifying as a Molyneux witness, meaning that I'm showing MO. He did the same thing to his other baby mother, the older sibling of my child. And it was, a 6-hour ordeal. It involved kidnapping and tasering and all sorts of things. So in this case, in these cases that cause a sort of specter, it's a specter of outrage. It's similar to like police killings. When it happens, it becomes this thing that's just, how could this ever happen? The sex offender, we all care so deeply about it. And in a way, Waleed is going to be that figure once all of the evidence comes out. Though, mind you, at this moment, it's very quiet, a few cases because he's a, MC, whatever. The reason why I'm here and the thing that makes me most want to speak is my dad, he went to Blake. He was a Blake boy and, went to school with Al Franken and them. And the question of why we choose who we do, or when do we catch the pattern, or how does it happen? And where were the spaces and what were the patterns throughout, when I was dating my manager at Lund, who was 32 and married, and I was 14 and a bagger, and everybody knew about that. These are the questions, and that's in Edina, right? So I grew up in South Minneapolis. My reason I'm a little bit scattered, but only just to sort of try to show the complexity of it, of when we have these disclosures, there's certain individuals, and often because they're vulnerable in certain ways, that become the figure of the sex offender. And yet we know that it's happening everywhere in all of these families. All of the times you've been like that weird uncle, or you actually heard the story, but he denied it, and that child just kept growing up and now she's wilding out, and now she's doing this, or having a mental health crisis, or in a psych ward, and now you don't have to think about it anymore because that identified patient is gone out the family, And I think the biggest thing that we see is that people, even your professor, my professor Neil Smith was one of the most famous and well-renowned Marxist geographers. I was on track to be a very whatever. The point being, you pick people who are vulnerable, and that happens when you start at 4 years old. Dudes knew who I was at the park, So the question of what you're accustomed to and what grooming does, I think the biggest question here in terms of sex offenders, why does it matter, is if we don't create the spaces that we're talking about, these circles in which perpetrators are invited to come, and you will have that 1 out of 10. She said 1 out of 10 said, I'm not going to do this. I'm going to take a jail sentence, or I didn't do this, or I'm not willing to. I have a feeling that some of my perps would be that person. Okay, well then go ahead then. Then we will have a criminal justice system. It's imperfect. I don't want it, but all right, that might be the case. But a lot of people, a lot of survivors, and a lot of perps would love to be accountable if that accountability was possible, if there was a space to do that. But the system is so punitive, and once your storyteller grows up and finally gets their voice back, and now suddenly everybody is so fucking horrified. But when I was in a psych ward saying all this, well, so sorry, my language, I apologize. But anyway, just to say that, suddenly survivors recover, and sometimes they turn back for everybody in the community. But that question in the community has to come around too. So I think that would be
think Siobhan started this. I want to go with Kilmarie first. You know, in the civil rights movement, many of the Black feminists have to talk about this idea of self-care. And they say that self-care is not about self-indulgence, rather it is about self-preservation. And I'm wondering, Kilmarie, how are you doing self-preservation? What does that entail for you?
It's a good question. And it's a hard one. I tend to look at self-care as being, it depends on what kind of self-care. Are we talking about the self-care that keeps you alive, you know, make sure that you get enough sleep at night, to keep going, enough food, that kind of thing, or the self-care that's like the bubble baths kind of thing, you know? So for me, I'm a survivalist in a way. So for me, my self-care is honestly, it's working, it's taking care of my daughter, it's being outside, gardening, doing those kinds of things, keeping myself extremely active, and continuing to push forward in, you know, my passions and my dreams. That's my self-care. I am a big proponent of, like, you know, harm reduction, I guess, in terms of how we care for ourselves too. So I'll be the first to admit that self-care for me might look like, I have PTSD, so it might look like medical cannabis, to be honest, and that's okay. You know, that's okay. That's what self-preservation is about. And so, you know, it might mean that I have to take a couple of days where I don't talk to anyone. I am on the spectrum, and it can be very difficult after events like these when I really kind of pour myself out. And it can be very difficult. So I will often just kind of shut my phone off and spend time alone, spend time in prayer, meditation, reading, spend time with the people closest to me, ground myself in that again. That's how I preserve myself for another day.
Okay. Well, therapy. That's been is it? Yes. I think this question about therapy is spending the 6 hours in a space. I think I have DID, which is dissociative identity disorder. So used to be multiple personality disorder. I think one of the again, this question, especially when you become a certain person in a community, being able to find those spaces and those people that you can break apart with. I think that's the biggest thing that I'm learning this year. 2022 will be the year that I figure out this question of self-preservation. But I think that having more of those 6-hour Saturday lunches, creating that space. You know, like somebody said recently, like, sit at the table where the women are healed, the conversation is different. And but I'm not there, you know, so I want to sit in the intermediate table where just we can break apart. And so that's basically.
Well, I think the biggest thing is just like self-care. That's wide. But believe it or not, like it's not being so busy. Like I call it fake busy, ineffective busy, like doing a lot to avoid. In terms of self-care, it's like really trying to be present. That's big for me, is being really present. What I've learned around my personal self-care is not evading in terms of escape, be that like 2 or 3 bottles of wine, which historically was my form of self-care, which is not anymore, but actually being in spaces with people who love me, and appreciating that space and talking to folks in that space. Writing has been a very huge part of I don't like the concept of survival because I want more than that. But writing has literally been an opportunity for me to express the toxicity that I've been exposed to throughout my journey in this world. So writing is a big part of my self-care. Telling people no is a huge part of my self-care, because oftentimes people can exploit you in a lot of different ways. And so yeah, saying no and being okay to rest, believe this or not, drinking water is so super huge. Breathing, I know it sounds crazy, but like for real, breathing, because sometimes we're really not breathing. And sleeping. And it's okay to rest. Like even when you're not asleep, people are like, Siobhan, what are you doing? Nothing. And I'm okay with doing that. And also having a heart of gratitude, because as I began to journey with the experiences that I did experience, and I will be, just to be frank, they did change. It changed my life. It made me someone different, not someone better or worse, but someone different. But in that, it allowed me to meet and encounter other people who had experienced things different than I did. And so to walk in a space with a heart of gratitude, to the point where like when I did and was able to reveal what happened to me, people believed me. I have friends who people didn't believe them. So like to walk with a heart of gratitude and see the beauty, that's self-care, is to look around. Like even in this space right now, I have several friends in this space who've walked with me during dark places and light places. So I think self-care is a part of gratitude. And then you find new ways to practice self-care, new ways. So, but water, Dr. Raj, you know anything about water, Dr. Raj?
Just gonna say,
What you know
Siobhan
about
didn't
that
talk
water,
about
Dr. Raj?
a lemon infused, cucumber infused water.
Cinnamon, turmeric, ginger, cayenne.
Turmeric.
Y'all better come on here.
Because that's what Siobhan does. Every time she sees me, have you drank some water today? Here's some water. I just, Siobhan, the topic, right? Sex offender, should we care, right? What does that mean? How is that sitting with y'all on your body?
Because I'll be straight up with you, and one person can testify to this. When I heard the concept of this conference, like this is really radical. Like, because it's really radical. You can clap for that. I have been a serious advocate for the last 20 years around the mass incarceration and my criticism of it and my writing about it and the waste of it. But honestly, sex offenders are like a subgroup in my mind. And I'll just be really frank with you. It's not necessarily a group of people that I've considered rehabilitating or reaching out to. And so when this concept, I was like, dang, that's super deep. Because I mean, people joke about it. It's like they're, but if we really want to talk about this on the real in terms of reconciliation and restoration and like being this great space that we're talking about, we got to really be for real about that. And so even in my first journey, as I said before, when I was sodomized by my eldest cousin, I had to, in that healing, understand that once we peel back the layers of his journey, he had been sodomized by an elder uncle. And I wasn't able to take that information until I was 22 years old because I really didn't care. I just realized like, you messed me up. But having known how that impacted him as a male who was 10 plus years older than me, and how just the dynamic and the taboo of him being a male and being sodomized and how that played out in his journey. So when we start talking about why do you care? Because as we start peeling back these stories, 9 times out of 10, hurting people hurt people. And 9 times, and thank you, sis, clap that up. That's true. That's real talk. And sometimes we think like these little sayings or these little cliches are just what they are. No, that's facts. Hurting people hurt people. Where you learn how to do that at? And so I really do in my sincere heart, is just like the elder said today, when we start talking about this healing, we start talking about this empathy and this forgiveness, we are a part of that. And so what's your story? And I mean, I work with the willing. We talking about racism, I work with the willing. If we talking about people who are really trying to heal and live a life of liberation, I work with the willing. So I think we might need to start like, well, what's your story? Because I guarantee you 9 times out of 10, if some foul behavior that's been demonstrated and perpetuated, somebody probably experienced that in their own journey as well. Y'all better give it up. We in Minnesota, but come on now.
I can keep this short. The question of, for me, the question was why sex offenders, why should we care? I think coming back to that notion of working with the willing, and I think that was what's so powerful about the keynote that we started with, which is just that there's also myths about trauma, which sometimes is that it only, that if we stop at hurt people, and we don't think about the fact that that the roots of abuse are often entitlement, and coercion and control. So, and that's important because when people are willing to come to that conversation and you see 9 out of 10 people coming to that circle, and you do have those people who are not willing. And I think that's one of the issues that we have between criminal justice and transformative justice. And I think that sometimes the sex offender becomes like this figure that we have to turn our attention to. It is the figure to turn, because often what you have is in restorative practices with so-called sex offenders, those who have caused harm and who have been harmed, they're willing to, and the survivors are willing to come to that space. And the healing looks absolutely different than the money and the types of damage and destruction that these types of programs that we have in place now are doing. And there's always that jail cell for a pedophile if he's not going to come to the table and all that. And I wish that we were in a different society and that wasn't true. But at the end of the day, that's what's going to happen. That's the fallback. The reality is that them sitting in them jail cells and getting released eventually, that's not curbing the harm, that's delaying the harm. And this type of commitment program, we're going to be talking about all day. So I just want to say, again, coming back to that question of that once somebody becomes the figure of the sex offender, then all of a sudden you could throw them away. But you're going to keep those uncles all the way with no accountability all day until they die. And they could have had a different life too. By colluding with abuse is as harmful and as morally repugnant as the abuse itself. But then putting that just aside in these certain figures and acting as though that's somehow a solution is also morally repugnant. So it's like, you got to deal with it, especially with the abolitionist cause. Also, you have to deal with the safety of survivors. And I think that this is the space to grapple with all of that.
I think we have a question online first. Hey, where is my chat? Oh my God, that's a long one. Okay. For smaller traditional communities, talking about sexual assault is not often confronted. Sometimes this is because individuals wanting to protect the person who did it because they may be part of the community and family of the victim. And because if it comes out, the victim's family or themselves are afraid of victim shaming. So the question is whoa, where did that go? Okay, how can more traditional closed communities confront sexual assault and provide resources for both victims and offenders in a way in which they are not shamed, to prevent or reduce generations of offenders that exist because there is no accountability, right? Traditional closed communities, how do we provide care for both people who have been harmed and people who caused the harm?
When you talk about traditional closed communities, the definition can be defined in so many different ways. But I come from a very stone cold Christian religious family. My father's a pastor. I grew up in a church. But you have to talk about it. I don't care how closed it is. I don't care how traditional it is. It has to be talked about. And shame doesn't have to be a space in which a person stays, but there are layers to this. There are paths to this, and you might go through that. But I think just getting that conversation out, and I believe Maya Angelou said it, like, one of the most painful stories is the story that's trapped and never told. It's like, we have to think about the people who are walking around carrying, when you are sexually violated, and if anybody knows, you carry something with you. Like you walk around, I think of the I think of the cartoon character Peanuts. It's like you walk around with this cloud over your head and feeling like you've done something bad or you're dirty, and so like we just have to put it out there, like get it out. I think sometimes thinking of the long-term solution prevents us being present and getting to what we got to get to today. Too many people are suffering in that regard to us trying to figure it out. We know it's happening. We need to face it. That's just my opinion in regard to that. There's no easy way to do this.
Thank you, Siobhan. Anyone else here?
Well, I just to add one piece, because I think one of the things that we're often scared of is the cost traveling back to the perpetrator. And that's often because there's an imbalance in the beginning between the status of a perpetrator and his or her victim or their victim. And when you disclose, the cost can travel back, and that can take social costs, professional costs. There's all types of costs, and that's not carceral logic. That's consequences. And I think that we get very scared of those who have caused harm facing consequences for what they've done. Now, there are certain individuals where we don't feel anything at all about them facing every type of consequence. And that's the white supremacy of the system. And that's why my story makes it so visible, because there are certain people where we don't have any issue as a society being like, they can take all those consequences immediately. But in general, when you're talking about a closed community and you're talking about people withstanding within that community, we have an idea that when disclosure happens, that cost is going to travel back, and not just to the perp, but those who surround them, or just to the person who causes harm, but those who surround them, the close friends, the family. But I think that that's that piece of knowing that there is a cost, and that disclosure often makes that shame travel back to where it's rightfully needs to be, and having those conversations about consequences versus carceral or punishment logics, I think is a place that we got to begin, especially in closed communities.
So I think at this point, we're almost asking the question too late. I think if we really want to be able to address shame, if we want to be able to address some of those questions, some of what's been brought up in here, we need to start at a younger age. So we need to start talking about healthy sexuality and consent, as well as trauma, how that plays out, that intersectionality of trauma and acting out the trauma that you've had enacted upon you. Those are things we need to be talking about with our kids. We need to be talking about that in our communities. I come where my assault occurred was a rural community in Minnesota, and it was very closed-minded. And I think had we been able to engage with youth and other people in the community around these conversations, educating folks on these things, we would have been able to later have continued conversations on, well, what does victimization look like? Has it, now it's occurred, what does it look like? What can we do without that shame aspect? So having those conversations prior to it ever getting here sets the foundation for us to be able to continue having those conversations if and when some type of sexual assault does occur within the community. So.
Is it okay if we open it up to the community? Okay. Dave. Oh, you got.
Hi, I'm Christina. First, I want to thank the panelists for sharing your stories. It's amazing and blessing, and thank you. I am a 22-year-old survivor of sexual assault and attempted murder. I'm also was raised in a devout Christian family, and I have multiple generations in law enforcement as well. And it's just coming here today, listening to this, I really want to implore all of you and really beg you as a survivor as well to really push through restorative justice, especially that applies to sexual assault survivors. I can tell you for myself, my healing would have been expedited if I had had this support and this opportunity. I can tell you that my offender I was blessed with an apology from him, but he has destroyed his life, and he continues to destroy his life. He thankfully has not assaulted another person as he has devolved or as we know of, but his pain doesn't do anything for me. His destruction doesn't do it. If anything, it's pain that I carry around because we share this trauma. Thank you all for your time. Thank you. Be blessed.
Hello. Okay, hello, my name is Tiana Hunter. I'm the founder of Metamorphosis Success Center. And I also am a sexual assault victim as well as attempted murder victim. However, I also have a facility that hopefully restores the care to incarcerated individuals preparing for release. So I think that is very difficult because being a person who has experienced this, also trying to help the same person who did this to me, right? So when we talk about restorative justice, I believe that it starts with the restorative justice at home, because growing up in a Black home, what you hear is what goes on in this house, stay in this house, right? And if we continue that saying, how do we prepare ourselves to have these conversations, not just as children to tell somebody what's going on with us, but also as adult women who experience rape and you feel guilt because you should be able to handle these circumstances. So is it likely to have restorative justice prepared in ways that we can revisit it towards our households, our families, our schools, to make it better for us to have these conversations and not feel guilty about it or, you know, disrespecting our household?
Only to go back and not trying to stand as a know-it-all or know-all, but just from the experience that I have when I sat with those 12 women in my church whose professions range from everything, who had, I mean, some of the most amazing women that you can think in standard of accolades and success, but just that vulnerability, I can't express it. It's like, you know, feelings and different things are going to be a part of it, but those aren't places that we have to stay. Shame and guilt might be there in a moment, but it's not a place that we have to stay. But being courageous enough to stand in those spaces for that time or not. But I think that once we share our stories, we give people permission to share their stories. That vulnerability gives us permission to see ourselves and other people. And so I think that's the starting place. But we can't be immobilized by the fear of the unknown. We know what we're dealing with in terms of the pain of the immobilization of what happened to us, but we can't be immobilized by what we don't know. So I just think the vulnerability of sharing was powerful for me.
Hi, my name is Julia. And first I want to say thank you also so much for speaking to us. And one of the things that I think we don't talk about super often is that there are like survivors in this room and who do the work and who show up and like are doing the work every day and don't always want to disclose or feel comfortable disclosing. And you know, like the things people will say and the things they will do is sometimes when they think a survivor is not in the room, or even if they know a survivor is in the room. And so I think the question that I have for you is, first of all, like, what do you think needs to change within our movement and the place where we're working for us to be able to do this work better and more respectfully for survivors? And in the meantime, how do you as survivors like protect yourself from some of the things that are happening within our movement that might be painful or re-traumatizing or re-victimizing?
I think a couple of things. One is that the question of silencing of survivors, you know, which begins not just with the character assassination. I mean, that's when somebody's already speaking, but the comments that you refer to and the ways in which in just a casual disposition, most survivors believe that if they disclose, they will not be believed, unless for some reason they have a social status that within the community that would allow them to be. So like in my case, if I'm testifying against a Black man, now suddenly, of course I'm believed. But if I'm testing it against my white father, well, then we got a question because we have an imbalance in terms of the community. So for me, I think that one of the questions becomes, how do we as leaders make that space to have the conversations? Because I think they're not happening. The silencing begins before anyone even discloses. Then once they disclose, now suddenly you're hearing about their drunk driving or every aspect of a character assassination that doesn't even have to be by the perp. And people don't even realize that the question of apologists, and again, I think coming back to this question of Judith Herman says, like, the perpetrator asks you nothing, see nothing, do nothing. The survivor is asking you to speak, to stand, to act. It's a much harder ask. So I think that the beginning though has to be that there's the space to have the conversation. And this question about the casual pieces, how do we create both institutionally and then just in terms of protocol for culturally, how do we create those spaces in which the comments are directly engaged, but also that this notion of a broader understanding of the power imbalance when a survivor comes forward and what they're likely to be subjected to is just known. Like these things repeat like it's clockwork, you know, and yet it's not widely known. And so every survivor often feels that individually as though they might be the only one who is experiencing that degree of repression. But that's how culture, that's how communities function, you know, and there's a level of survival and protection in that, but we have to change the practices. I think that's what I would say.
The question is, how do we confront this issue in a way that considers the wrongfully accused offender? Is there space in restorative, transformative justice to deal with actual innocence?
I don't have any magic answers, but I can say that, I mean, I definitely think there's space. There's more space there than there is in our current system. So particularly for individuals that when there's that balance in power, so like imbalance of power, there we go. I think it's harder to have that conversation, particularly within the traditional criminal justice system. For me, the individual that assaulted me was a white man in a position of power. And there was no chance to have that conversation, really. There was no space to have any kind of conversations. And, you know, I think that we need to like we have such a penal system. We have a system that is very punitive. And I think that there is no room right now to talk about the wrongfully accused or whatever it might be. We don't have that space. There's no chance really for that. The best place we can have that is within restorative and transformative justice practices, I think. That's where we have to start with that. We have to create the space. And because we're the ones creating it here, I think we're allowed to create that space, right? This is like our dream. This is our vision, our goal to do this. So if it's up to us, then we can do this? Let's get together. Let's write practices. Let's do protocols. Let's learn from our elders and find out where that space is actually going to be. So, yeah.
So I know we didn't address everything that people came to hear here. So we apologize for that. We're running out of time too, right? So please stick around. I want to ask each of the panelists here, Sophie, Siobhan, and Kila Marie, to give us a closing statement, things that we can take away with us today, right? Go ahead, Sophie.
Closing statement. Great. I guess I would just say this, that with the question being sex offenders, why should we care? I think, like, just to go back to this, there's a question of consequence and then there's a question of punitive. So when I was saying that for certain individuals, we're okay with consequences, no, we're okay with the most hyper violent, punitive responses. And often those are Black and brown and indigenous people that we're okay that would be the consequence to whatever action. And we're not interested in the story. You know, we're not interested in the story. Y'all probably interested in my dad's story, but you're probably not interested, not those who are sitting here, but just to say, who do we humanize and who do we make that space for? And then when we know that it's happening in all of our communities, in our families, if you take an extended family view, then the question becomes like, you have to care. So I think that this question of dealing with the hyper violence against those who have been accused and convicted and those who are guilty of sexual violence and then fit the category of sexual offender. I think we have to start with that hyper violence, sorry, and then this question about the broader, like changing the practices so that we can move forward.
The one thing I say, just like in any conference or any workshop that we attend to, we know that we're not going to get a solution from that workshop or that day. And so this is just an opportunity, like many other opportunities, for us to continue doing the work for people who have experienced sexual violence. The work and the trauma doesn't start there. The work doesn't stop there. It's continuous work as long as you have breath in your body. And so we have to continue to do the work. If this was a new conversation, continue to learn more, listen to more stories, believe people when they tell you what they're telling you, and don't be afraid to ask somebody what's their story. But just like with any workshop, with any conference, this is an old story. This is an old story. And one thought that went through my head was to have people close their eyes and people hold their hands up who have been impacted directly by sexual violence. And so just having two sisters stand up and reveal that, what's your story? And how do we want to change that story? How do we want to change these narratives? So, yeah.
A couple of things. Victims don't always look like what you're going to think they're going to look like. So when we talk about offenders, we're talking often about victims, and we need to really remove the stigmatization of those who identify as non-binary, transgender, male, et cetera, who are being victimized. I think that's really important because that internalized shame and stigmatization often will come out in unhealthy behaviors and potentially even continued abuse of others. Second, for every 40 individuals, on average, only one of them will ever commit an act of power-based violence, such as rape or sexual assault. 1 out of 40. So that leaves 39 other individuals, right? Those 39 other individuals, we didn't really talk about them today. We talked about community, we talked about the offender, and we talked about the victim, but we did not talk about the role of a bystander. And I do hate that term in certain ways. It's cliche, whatever it is. But we as community and as bystanders have the opportunity and I think we are called to intervene in situations such as this prior to them ever getting to situations such as this. So that means we have the power to be able to stop some of these things. And we as a community need to come together to find ways to do that that are not shame-based, that are not us versus them, but are inclusive of all of us, holds a mirror up to all of us and says, this is who we are and this is who we want to be. So that's what I want to leave with is, there's so many options for us to move forward. And I think this is a great beginning. Not even beginning, there's been so much work to get to here, but today is an awesome opportunity to just kind of like jump off with this foundation. So.
So Richard Rohr often says, right, pain not transformed will transfer. And Marie, your call for us to be present, to right the wrong, and to be present to prevent the harm that Siobhan called for, right? I appreciate. So let's give it up for them, and then let's take like a 5-minute. No transition.
We are not taking a break right now. Yes, first of all, wow, thank you so much. Please, again. We took our break earlier. We're not taking a break right now, but please take care of yourselves. And also speaking of taking care of yourselves, just a reminder, we have downstairs, so you get to them by going through this reception area, beyond it, right to an elevator, downstairs, around to the right are rooms 117 and 118. One is a quiet room and one is a yoga room. Those are things that would help you right now, then please take advantage of them. Also, we do have counselors on call, 2 here and 1 online. I'll make sure that the Zoom for the one that's online, that Zoom link gets into the chat. So, and if you would like to speak to a counselor, just speak to Jody out at the registration table. And I'm going to turn it over to David to introduce our next speaker.
So, good late morning. We are honored to have Mr. Eric Janis with us. Eric Janis is the former president and former dean of Mitchell Hamlin University School of Law. He is also the author of several articles and books relating to sex offense and policy. Probably most notable or most relevant to this forum today is Cornell University's publishing a press who published Failure to Protect America's Sexual Predator Laws and the Rise of the Preventative State.
Hello? Sorry about that. Let me just get a minute here. All right, hello, everybody. I wanna, gonna just turn my watch on so that I'm cognizant of the time, and we'll leave some room for discussion and questions. So first of all, let me just acknowledge the power and the bravery and the wisdom of the panels, the panel preceding this, and of our keynote speaker. And as we were planning this conference, we very consciously said, we want to go first. We want to center those stories so that we approach this problem with those stories in mind. And so I'm humbled to follow on those wise and brave people. And I know that my presentation is in a lot of ways, not as personal. And so I just want to acknowledge that. The title of my presentation is The Problem with MSOP, the Minnesota Sex Offender Program. I'm going to kind of define what that is, but I want to start out by saying that the problem is not with some people, not with the people who are running MSOP. It's a problem with the system and how we're approaching the question of sexual violence. So it's much larger than people. And I am not interested in personal attacks on anybody. And I encourage all of us to, as we have done, discuss this very difficult topic kind of openly and authentically, as has been suggested earlier. So next slide, please. So this is what I want to suggest. We've got a $100 million program in this state that's locking up 740 people, probably many of them for life. And the purpose of the program is an important one. It's to prevent sexual violence. But I want to suggest, for a number of reasons, it's not a very smart way to go about that. And I want to open up the discussion about whether this is the best way to take that resource, $100 million a year. Is this the best way of putting that money to use in fighting and protecting against sexual violence? I don't think it is, but that to me is the question. Now I want to just say a little bit personal about how I got involved in this. And I started out as a lawyer working for legal aid. And I started out working for people with mental illness who are being subjected to civil commitment. I'm talking about standard civil commitment of people with severe mental illnesses who have difficulty protecting themselves or taking care of themselves. And so I became an expert in civil commitment. In '92, when civil commitment started to be used against people with sex offenses who were being released from prison, I was called by a colleague and appointed by the court to represent one of the first people and to bring a constitutional challenge against this form of locking people up of continuing their incarceration after they have served their prison sentences. So I've been working on this issue since 1992, and I started out because I was frankly offended as a constitutional civil liberties lawyer by the fact that we could lock people up based on a prediction of future harm. That's where I started from. But the more I learned about it, the more I also understood that this is a bad model for addressing sexual violence. And it is also not the most effective way we could be using a huge resource. So that's what I hope to cover today with you. So next slide, please. First of all, what is this? What are we talking about? What is civil commitment? What's the Minnesota Sex Offender Program? Sometimes it's called MSOP. MSOP is the program. The laws in this state are called sexually dangerous person laws. In many states, they are called sexually violent predator laws, but they're a form of civil commitment. So next slide, please. What is, I'm going to call it sex offense civil commitment. What is sex offense civil commitment? Next slide, please. So sex offense civil commitment, we have programs like this that are in about 20 states. It's important to remember 30 states don't have these programs. These are programs for the most part that address people who have served, they've been convicted of a sex offense, they've gone to prison, they've served their time, they're about to get out, and then they are petitioned to go into a secure treatment facility. These laws are modeled on traditional mental health laws, but there's a difference. Traditional mental health laws address people with severe psychiatric illnesses, psychotic illnesses that impair their ability to perceive reality and care for themselves. The sex offense civil commitment laws are not based on that. They are based on a so-called mental abnormality. Number two, they require a prediction that a person might commit a sexual offense in the future. Our law also requires a showing of past harmful sexually harmful conduct. And these laws then result in a commitment to of the person to a secure facility, in our case, the Minnesota Sex Offender Program, which has two facilities, one in Moose Lake, one in St. Peter. And these are commitments that are indefinite. Next slide, please. So here's a representation of the process. I'm not going to talk very much about the specifics of the law. We'll have a breakout group after this in the afternoon if you're interested in that. But this is the process. There are people get out of prison or are about to get out of prison. There's a screening process at the Department of Corrections to try to identify people who might be appropriate for civil commitment. They're referred to county attorneys who make a decision about whether to petition. Then there's a trial. Then there's indefinite commitment. And then there's some processes that are intended or supposed to allow people to be released when that's appropriate. Next, please. So the first thing to know about this is that the criteria for getting locked up are extremely elastic. This is not like the criminal justice system where there's actually a very specific question that's being asked. Maybe not always well or answered very well, but in the criminal justice system is, did you commit this crime at this place at this time? In this situation, the question are twofold. Do you have a mental abnormality? And that's very vague. And number two, is there a chance, a high probability that you're going to commit a crime in the future? What kind of crime? A sexually harmful crime. But other than that, we don't have to say anything about what that crime might be or where it might take place or when it might take place. So this is a very elastic set of criteria. Next, please. Next thing to know about this is that these civil commitment programs, they turn our usual ideas about justice on their head. Usually the idea is you did something, there's a consequence. Here the idea is you might do something, we're going to lock you up. So the Supreme Court has said there has to be a limit on civil commitment. What is it? That when the conditions that justified civil commitment no longer obtained, you have to be let out. I call this the durational principle. And what we'll see is that that's been one of the downfalls, in my opinion, of the Minnesota sex offender program, is that this principle, even if you accept the idea of civil commitment as a legitimate idea, which I have difficulty doing, this principle has more often than not been adhered to. Next, please. If you don't know the Prison Policy Initiative website, I recommend it. It's a great website with a lot of data. This tells us that civil commitment is part of the problem of mass incarceration. Nationally, there are about 6,000 people locked up in these so-called sex offense civil commitment programs. Minnesota, it's about 740. Next, please. Now, politically, this is a very attractive idea. The idea is let's find who the most dangerous people are and let's lock them up from doing harm again. What in the world could be wrong with that idea? Next, please. So the narrative at the beginning, and by the narrative, I mean, this is the story that the legislators told when they enacted these laws. And it's also the story the state told to the courts when the constitutionality of locking people up in advance of their crime was questioned. The narrative was this: this is going to be a real civil commitment program, like the kind of civil commitment we have for really mentally ill people, and it's going to be brief. The state told the Supreme Court in the early 90s this is going to be a program with 4 phases. Each would be 8 months long for the model client. A 3-year program. You'd be treated, and then if you did well in the treatment, you'd be out in 3 years. And second of all, the state said this is a stopgap measure. You know, normally in our country, we don't lock people up in advance of their crimes. We hold people accountable, we hope, for their crimes. So unfortunately, in the early 90s, we discovered that we weren't treating sexual assault very seriously. There needed to be, people thought, more serious consequences. So the idea was, give us a chance, let us readjust the criminal law to reflect the seriousness of sexual violence. In the stopgap, we'll have this civil commitment to pick up the gap. Next slide. These original promises have been belied. This has not been a temporary program, and it has not been a short program. Next, please. Nonetheless, during the interim between when these laws were enacted and now, criminal penalties have gone up radically, more than doubled, for all levels of criminal sexual conduct. So the underlying premise, which was that we need to take sexual misconduct more seriously, has been acted on. But the second part of it, which was then once that happens, we can stop with this emergency civil commitment, that has not been. Next, please. So this is what these are commitments to the Minnesota Sex Offender Program by year. And you can see at the beginning, it was fairly small, and then it shot way up. That was politics, right? And that, now it's gradually come down, but it has not, it certainly has not disappeared. Next, please. And so here's the annual census at MSOP, steadily increasing. It's leveled off a bit now, as you might expect for a nearly 30-year-old program, but the trend has gone up. This has not been a temporary program. Next, please. And here's why. The left-hand column is the population of MSOP. It's about 740. How do you get out Well, the next column is people who've been conditionally released into the community. It's about 35, I think, right now. Next column is full discharges. It's about 16. And then the next column is people who've died. That's how they've gotten out. It's somewhere around 90. Next, please. Minnesota sex offender MSOP is a national outlier. If you're going to have a civil commitment program, you don't have to do it like we're doing it. Next, please. First of all, 30 states don't have a program like this. And I'm gonna, if I have time, I'm gonna present some research that those states don't have more sexual violence than we do. Next, please. Here's civil commitment, current census, inpatient. The 17 of the 20 states that have this. Minnesota, the highest population of all these states, higher than California, higher than Florida, higher than Virginia, Illinois, Texas. Next. This is per capita. Minnesota is by far the highest per capita by an order of magnitude. Next, please. Here's this chart shows the number of people in these states that have been fully discharged from the programs. We're blocking what these states are here. Florida, 564 people discharged. Minnesota, 13. Minnesota is way to the bottom of that. Next slide, please. And here is the report. This is from 2020 of the people on conditional release. Again, Minnesota is towards the bottom of that list. So again, even if you're going to have these programs, you don't have to do it the way we're doing it. What can we learn from this? Next slide, please. Civil commitment fluctuates with the political winds. It is not a scientific approach. It's a very, very political approach. Next slide, and we know this already. Here's the chart of people referred from DOC to the counties. Next slide, please. Number of commitments by year. Now, if we're really trying to figure out who the worst of the worst are, if that's what's going on, well, which one of these bars represents the worst of the worst? The very small ones or the very large ones? Let's face it, these are very elastic criteria and they change temporally, given the political climate, which moral panic we're in at any given time. And next slide, please. And they also change and are variable from county to county, from district to district. So this is a chart compiled in 2011 by the Office of Legislative Auditor, showing the percentage of cases in each of the judicial districts in the state that get petitioned based on a referral. And in some counties or some districts, it's fairly low, some districts fairly high. So what does this, next slide, what does this variability mean? Well, in part, it means that the criteria are extremely flexible. And in part, it means that there's a lot of politics involved. Next slide, please. And the federal district judge, Donovan Frank, when he considered this case, as well as a number of task forces, have identified the political influence that is at work in this program. So let's acknowledge that. Let's take a look, next slide, please, at what some of the social science tells us about this. So I mentioned that there are 30 states that don't have these laws, 20 states that do. Can we see any differences in the incidence of sexual assault between those two states? We're spending $100 million in this state. Is it making us safer, is the question. And two law professors published a study in 2013. Do these laws, they call them SVP laws, do they make a difference? Next slide, please. So what they did was they compared states that had these laws before they were enacted and after, and then states that don't have these laws before they were enacted and, back in 1990 and then in 2008. Next slide. And they asked, can we see a difference in the change in sexual assault levels in those states? Because we ought to see those levels of assault go down more steeply in states with SVP laws. The result was actually the opposite. The decline was steeper in states without those laws than with. Next slide, please. And they tracked rape to try to see whether the gap between SVP states and non-SVP states widened. It didn't. Next slide, please. And they also tracked child sexual abuse to see whether that showed that sort of a pattern, and it didn't. Next slide. And their conclusion was that statistically speaking, there is no observable correlation between having an SVP law and greater safety. Next slide. Their, and I'm going to get to this, but their recommendation was don't spend money on these programs. Figure out other ways of using your resources to fight sexual violence. So next slide. Grant Dewey, a researcher at the Minnesota Department of Corrections, said, well, let me look at the Minnesota program. Let's ask whether the Minnesota program, I'm not going to ask broadly speaking, does it make us safer, but let's ask whether it prevents some recidivistic violence, because we know we're locking people up. So when they're locked up, they can't offend against people outside of the institution. So maybe it has a reduction in recidivism. Next slide. So what he found is this. Recidivism, we have to acknowledge, recidivism measures observed reoffense, right? And it matters how long you track it for. So what he found was that the 4-year sexual recidivism rate of sex offenders released from prison and not committed was 2.8%. In other words, 97% of sex offenders released from prison weren't observed committing a further sexual offense within 4 years. He estimated the recidivism that would have been committed by people who have been committed to MSOP. You have to estimate it because they've been locked up. And the estimate was based on this MinSOS, this actuarial tool that is used to put people in the program. And he said that the 4-year recidivism rate for people locked up in MSOP is 99.2%. Or another way of putting that is that 90% of the people locked up in MSOP would not have reoffended or had they been released. Now, if you extend that over a lifetime, he said that the lifetime estimated reconviction rate for committed individuals was 17.6% and rearrest 28%. So let's look at what that means. Next slide, please. So here's the estimated recidivists who are locked up in MSOP is the red, and the green are the other people at MSOP, not recidivists. Next slide. Now, so what does that mean? How can we translate that into something about our public safety? Well, every year there are about 1,200 sex offenders released from prison, and about 15 to 20 of those nowadays are going to be committed. Okay, let's apply those numbers. That means that of the people released, they're going to be 33.6 recidivists, and of the people locked up, 1.84 recidivists. Next slide, please. So if all those people were released into the community, this is how much recidivism there'd be. Next slide. With MSOP, this is how much recidivism there is. So does it make a difference? Yes, but it is a small difference. Next slide, please. Now, we know that MSOP focuses like a laser on recidivism, but recidivism is a small part of the problem. only about 7% of those people who are convicted of a sex offense are recidivists. That is to say, they had a prior sex offense in their record. Next slide. And about 5% of sex offense arrests are first-time offenders. Are recidivists. Next slide, please. So MSOP makes a small difference in recidivism, and recidivism itself is a very small part of the problem of sexual violence. So we are spending $100 million, and this is the question: is this a good way to spend $100 million on a small sliver of a small part of a much bigger problem? Next slide. And in a sense, it's worse than that, because we know that most sexual assaults are not reported. So they never enter the criminal justice system. And recidivism only talks about those cases that have been observed and solved and sentenced. Next slide. So MSOP then deals with a very small part of the large problem of sexual violence. Next slide. And so this is the question that I think we need to address. Next question, next slide. I want to talk a little bit about a couple of reports, because there have been a lot of studies of this. Next slide. Office of Legislative Auditor, next slide, 2011. They said, here's a list of improvements we think you need to make. Some offenders are being committed, have lower risk of recidivism than some who are being released. Next slide. There are clients who, due to disability or age, could be managed in alternative setting. Next slide. Minnesota doesn't allow offenders to be released from commitment when they no longer meet commitment criteria. Next slide. 2 years later, a task force appointed by the Commissioner of Human Services, headed by former Chief Justice Eric Magnuson. Next slide. Final report. Broad consensus that the current system of civil commitment captures too many people and keeps them too long. Next slide. List of recommendations. I'm not going to go through them here, but very solid recommendations. Next slide. Unanimous recommendation of this task force that was bipartisan, by the way, had law enforcement on it, had county attorneys on it, appointed by the commissioner, broad unanimous. These are serious problems. There needs to be legislative action. Next slide. Legislation was drafted. It didn't pass. Why? Because of politics. Next slide. Karstens litigation brought in 2011. Class action. Next slide. The federal district judge found the program to be unconstitutional. It was later reversed on appeal. But many identified problems with the program. Many problems with the program identified by the judge. Next slide, please. Let me just speak about one of them. I mentioned this durational principle. You're supposed to get out of confinement as soon as you can live in the community safely, right? You know how long it takes? There's a process. You got to petition the Special Review Board. You got to have a hearing. Then you got to go to the special court, the CAP court. Next slide. Next slide. And one more. This is a decision recently by a court holding the Commissioner of Human Services in contempt for not obeying orders to move people to a less restrictive alternative, and identifying that this particular individual, as well as others like him, has been in limbo for 5 years since he petitioned to get out, all the way until when not get out, but be moved to a less restrictive alternative. 5 years. Think about what went on in your life for 5 years. Think about what that means for this person to wait for this process for 5 years. Next, please. So what does this amount to? Violation of rights, for sure. Misallocation of precious prevention dollars. We're keeping people locked up who, even, again, if you believe that this is a good program, shouldn't be there. We don't need to be spending $400 a day. Next slide. This is what it costs, 100 million a year. And actually, if I'm right in reading these numbers, it's going to go up to 105 next year. $6 million increase. Imagine what we could even do with that 6 million in terms of prevention. Next slide. Just to calibrate that a little bit. Violence Free Minnesota, great organization. Its budget, 1.4 million. I mean, we could have 4 more of those organizations for the price increase of what we're paying for MSOP. Next. Sexual Assault Prevention Grant Program, $600,000. Next. Stop Violence Against Women Program, 1.3 million in grants. I mean, we could increase that nearly 100-fold. Next. Are there needs out there? You bet. One of the previous panelists mentioned the Denied Justice series about the problems in the law enforcement dealing with sexual violence. Police overwhelmed and undertrained. Many rape kits untested. Could we put some resources there to improve our response to sexual violence? Next. There are a lot of responses to sexual violence. We've heard about a number of them today, but many of them are underfunded and they're not studied, and we need to identify which of these programs do a great job, and then we need to fund them and replicate them. Next, please. Next. Okay, next, please. So I just want to end by saying that I've been talking about what I call a utilitarian approach, which is to say we could be spending this money better. But you know what got me involved in this in the first place was the offense I take to using or misusing our law in pursuit of a noble purpose. But that noble purpose should not be grounded on a law that turns our justice system on its head in some very bad ways. So sex offender civil commitment, I showed you the slide that said that probably 80-some% of the people at MSOP wouldn't have reoffended. 20%, 28% maybe would have. And some people will say to that, well, so what? Who cares? It's worth it. If one life is saved, it's worth it to lock up all those other people. But imagine saying that in our justice system. So what SOCC does, what MSOP embodies, is a very dangerous kind of jurisprudence, a very dangerous thinking about law, in which a group of people that are reviled are degraded in the eyes of the law, and they inhabit an alternate and diminished legal system. Next, please. And by the way, this is not a new idea in this country. In the early part of the 20th century, early 1900s, eugenics movement, forced sterilization. I swear to you, it's the very same idea that's going on here, and that is that some people have to give up their liberty and get involuntarily sterilized for the benefit of society. Next, please. Japanese internment. Same idea. Yeah, too bad, a lot of innocent people, but among them are some people who might be dangerous. Got to lock the whole group up. Next. Jim Crow laws. Legal apartheid in the US, same basic idea. So the idea, this sex offense civil commitment, embodies this idea that it's okay to designate a certain group of people as outside of the group that we care about, and we can treat them in a sense however we want. Next, please. This has had some consequences already. Minnesota tried to extradite a pedophile from the UK. They wouldn't send him here because they said he might be subject to civil commitment, and it's a flagrant violation of the European Convention on Human Rights. Next, and next. Next. We know that mass incarceration disproportionately impacts BIPOC people. Well, that same disproportionality is carried through at MSOP. It extends it beyond prison. You can see the disproportionate presence of Black individuals at MSOP, and in particular of Indigenous individuals at MSOP compared to their frequency in the population. Next, please. All right, let's skip ahead. And I want to say, yeah, next. Next slide. Next. So why should we care? There's $100 million at stake. This is not a very sound, or in my opinion, legitimate way of dealing with an important problem. Politics has made this almost impossible to talk about. Next. And next. I hope that we don't continue to make our sexual violence policy in Minnesota using the kind of gotcha politics we saw in the recent confirmation hearings. Next, please. Preventing sexual violence is too important for gotcha politics. It's too hard a question. There's too much money involved that could be put to good use. So next question, what am I proposing? Well, I propose that we, people who care about this, engage in a collaborative problem-solving effort. People who care about prevention, accountability, survivor support, reentry, human rights, who are engaged in treatment. Can we get the gotcha politics out of it? Can we have a process to get people together and find out what the path forward is? Because I'll tell you something, over the years, as I've talked to many people, they've all said to me in private, this is a bad system, but I can't say that publicly. Well, let's have a process that kind of figures it out, and we take it to the politicians and say, this is how we're going to do it. Next, please. All right, I'm gonna stop there. Sorry, I went over a little bit, but we have a few minutes for questions, right?
Right, we know people are hungry. We have lunch waiting for you. We just maybe take a couple of questions here, and then we can, let you know where you're headed next. Is there a question on this side? Or, okay, great. Yeah, beautiful, thanks.
Dean, you mentioned a case concerning the issue of a 5-year delay and an individual trying to get out between SRB and CAP, and then the delay after that. Is that case before the Supreme Court now?
Oh, there are two cases that I know of. One is McDeed, and that is before the Minnesota Supreme Court, yes. And that case involved delays of about 3 years. And then there's a separate case, and the McDeed case is about damages, a damage claim to compensate the people whose step downs were delayed. There's another case, contempt of court case, that the commissioner was held in contempt. I'm not sure what's happened to the case since then. It's fairly recent. There's two different cases.
One other thing, Dean. Governor Pawlenty in 2003 made this statement many times: nobody gets out. Nobody gets out on my watch.
Right.
That's a statement he made it many times. And then maybe before, but since that, the government, who has the platform, the mass media platform, has jumped on it, and the government has portrayed the people in there as all violent people that cannot be cured, and have communicated to the public that these people are so bad and they cannot be cured that they should not be let out. And that's really false information. I mean, that's just not true. One size doesn't fit all. And your comment about politics, and were you saying that our legislature, our governor, knows this has to be fixed and won't do it?
Yeah, I wasn't making a comment about the current governor, but certainly in the past, this has been demagogued for sure. And it's not one particular political party that's done it. It's both sides. And that has to stop because people are getting hurt, not just people who are locked up in MSOP, but people who are getting hurt because we're spending $100 million way downstream when we should be thinking about root causes and how to prevent harm in the first place.
Looks like maybe we're eager to grab lunch. Dr. Janice, thank you so much for your presentation. Beautiful.
Thank you.
All right, here's what we're up to now. It is 12:15. The box lunches are out here in the reception area, so they're set up. There are a number of options. If you requested dairy-free or gluten-free, please ask. And do please, if you didn't have a chance to request, just hold back a little bit because there's some people who made specific requests. So pick up your box lunch. There are a few places you can sit. You know, there's not a lot of room in the reception area. The next building over here, the tallest building on campus in the Great Hall, there's plenty of seating there. We can also let you know where your breakout rooms are. If you're not familiar with the campus, but you've chosen your breakout room from the schedule, we can help direct you towards that. Thank you so much for all your attention this morning. For people online, thank you for being here. We hope you'll join one of our online breakout groups at 1 o'clock. Thank you.